In 2005, New York City firefighter, avid marathoner, and Ironman athlete Matt Long hopped onto his bike and basically did what he did every day, ride from his Manhattan apartment to the Randall's Island Fire Academy, where he helped train the city's bravest. But as he crossed 52nd Street, a 20-ton bus made a sudden right turn from the middle lane and struck Matt head-on, dragging his body underneath, where Matt was quite literally impaled by his bike. Matt ended up spending the next month in a coma, and when he woke up, his doctors told him he was facing a 1% chance of survival. But Matt, my friends, had other plans. Today's Rollback episode highlights this incredible and harrowing audio-only conversation from February of 2015, where Matt unpacks the story of his accident, of his recovery, and of his comeback quest to tackle the 2008 New York City Marathon just 3 years after waking from his coma. A story well told in his beautiful memoir, The Long Run. Matt is a man I hold in high regard as just an incredible example of the resiliency, not just of the physical body, but of the emotional body, the indomitable, boundless strength of the human spirit in selfless service to others. So, please hit that subscribe button, and I sincerely hope you enjoy this exchange between me and Matt Long.
What's a typical day look like for you now?
Typical day for me is waking up at 6 and taking the dogs out, and then tending to my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So and getting the older ones off to school, but after 9 o'clock, everything kind of settles down. Wife goes to work, and I'm back into training or doing whatever I can for the day.
And, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how, our lives are very different. They're sort of on different paths, but there's sort of common themes and they intersect in different ways. Like I sort of, created this disaster for myself to have to look in the mirror and kind of change my ways and live a different life. And you had a tragic intervening event, but it set you on a different kind of path for your life. And I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. You never know what, when you choose the road you're going to take in life, you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And, I guess it's an old adage. When I go around talking about it, it's what you do after that event that changes who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, something like that, you have two choices, right? It's either it's gonna crush you, it's gonna break you, or you have an opportunity to learn from it and grow and share something from that. And you obviously chose the latter, but it's the struggle and the journey towards that choice, I think, where your message is so powerful.
Yeah, and that struggle and that journey was not easy. It's funny. I can go around and talk about it. I can laugh about it. I can make some jokes about different things now, but those, let's say, 2 years of depression and surgeries and fighting different weaknesses in my body. It just felt like it was more than 2 years, like a lifetime. Mm-hmm. There were multiple times where I said to myself, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. And you're right. You either just quit and it takes you, or you fight. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've had any kind of level of success in winning the battle because I'm not who I used to be. And I never will. I'll never run as fast as I did. I'll never cycle. I'll never be as strong physically as I was, but I'm living my life the best I can, and there's no beating that.
Well, I think if you take a more expansive definition of strength, you're a stronger person now. You may not be able to run as fast as you could, but I think in terms of overall strength, I would characterize you as now being an extremely strong person.
It's funny we segue to that because two of men's fittest men in the world, sitting in one room.
In the same room at the same time.
Unbelievable.
We should call Men's Fitness and tell them.
That's right.
Yes.
Rich and Matt are doing a push-up contest right now.
Yeah, right. It was, I think it was you or 2010 that one,
yes.
right? Was it the everyman like hero kind of thing? Because that's that's how they pigeonholed me into that. I think it was the year, I was 2009. I was the year before you, I think.
2010 was me, and they just numbered the amount of surgeries I had and said, that's why he's here.
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, it's cool.
But I take it and roll with it.
Yeah. Hey, man, listen, you know what I always say? I was like, not for 1 second do I believe that I'm one of the 25 fittest men in the world, but that's pretty effective when you're trying to sell a book. It's like
Absolutely.
a good tagline.
Absolutely.
Right? But I think, you know, one question that comes to mind, you know, when you're sort of talking about how it was a hard road and such a struggle, you know, I'm sure people say to you every day, like, oh, you're such an inspiration, you know, thank you for your message and all of that. Like, how do you receive that? Like, when you look back on your, you know, sort of the humanity of that journey and how difficult it was for you, like, how do you process that?
You know, there are times when, and there are times when I get told that and I embrace it and I enjoy it, and that is my finish line. That is my sense of accomplishment or my purpose now. And I really, really, you know, I really take something from it. Like you were a kid when, you know, they said, wow, what a game you played today. Great game, you know, great job today. Good effort. And then there are other times when the person who's delivering it to me is worse off than I was. And may never walk again, or, you know, lost a leg or lost 2 legs. And they tell me, I've read your story, and you inspire me not to quit, not to give up. And at that point, I look at my wife, or I looked at someone close, and I go, you know, I don't want to be this inspiration. This is hard. You know, this is tough because I'm leaving here and I'm feeling bad for this person. And he's looking at me like, you know, this is it. I'm pushing because of you. And he may never walk again, you know, and I have plenty of friends now because of this journey, 2 or 3 that I'm really close with that are still in wheelchairs. And, you know, they let me know that I've inspired them. And I'm never going to tell them not to give up their dreams of walking again. I think deep down they may know it, but their inspiration to live a good life came from me not quitting. And it's tough. That's the hardest part. That's
right.
the hardest part. When you see someone who's overcome it and moved on, awesome. I'm glad I helped you. When you see someone that is worse than I was, it's very, very challenging to want to take that role.
How often are you going out and doing public speaking, and you know what does that look like for you now?
I've been traveling about 12 to 16 times a year.
Wow.
So not too bad the last 3 years. You know, this is speaking season is coming up, so things are rolling around.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I take I do it because I need it for a living now. And but I like certain audiences better than others because I feel like the message is more received. So I really enjoy speaking to college athletes. I really speak to high school athletes at a certain level. My story is pretty gruesome, I think, for younger kids.
What about veterans?
I haven't spoken to any veteran groups.
Oh, that's surprising. I would have thought that you would be somebody who would be great for that. Yeah,
I haven't spoken to any veteran groups. I've helped personally or been involved on the background of helping some veterans. I really enjoy that. The sacrifice they made. And, you know, I mean, I guess you could say I paralleled it by being a firefighter. I knew there was a chance in life that something really bad could happen to me with my profession. I didn't think it would be on a bicycle, get into my work.
Yeah, the irony of that is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like it happens in such a different way than you would have predicted.
Yep.
You know, if it had happened as a result of you doing your job, that's one thing. But the context in which that occurred is so extraordinary. So let's take it back for people who may not have read your book or are not familiar with your story. You grew up, bunch of brothers in Brooklyn, firefighter. Like, set the stage a little bit.
Yeah, okay. I'm the second oldest of 9 children. I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters. You know, I like to joke about it. Is, you know, where did I get my competitive nature? Is the dinner on Friday night. You know, Dad had a small ice cream parlor. Mom didn't work. How could you work with 9 children back in the day? So
9 kids.
yeah. So I think dinner on Friday night was like a competitive event. First one in gets the best meal.
That's kind of like a firehouse.
Oh, absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. And so I become a firefighter after college, and finding my way in Wall Street really wasn't for me. And my dad was like, "Hey, just take this test in high school." He said, "Take this test. You need to have a backup plan." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, when you're 18, you're like, "Well, who needs a plan?" Yeah, I don't need a plan, Dad. But you listen to him. And I took the test, and they called. Thank God, because I was at that point was out of work, and it was like the first time in my life I was like, wow, I loved it. I loved the job, and I felt like, wow, without really growing up saying I was called to be a New York City fireman. It became my calling, and I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed going to work every day. It was just unbelievable. However, it took me down this journey that changed eventually when I realized it changed the way I operated in life, changed the way I went about my daily routines. I got overweight, much like your story. In the fire department, it's a boys' club, and every night was a party. I mean, guy got promoted, you had a party. Guys retiring, you have a party. Guys getting divorced, let's have a party.
Right. So, plus a bunch of guys making food for themselves. It's not going to be on the healthy tip, right?
No. Put another stick of butter in there.
Do you know, have you ever met Rip Esselstyn? Do you know, the Engine 2 diet guy?
Oh, no.
Who turned around his firehouse. Yeah. So
Arizona or?
In Austin.
Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, on that, bringing my, what we're talking about here to time, I started doing this inventory check on my life. That's the way I like to talk about it. I started, why is my back hurting? Why am I not as happy going to work anymore? Why am I not doing this?
How old were you at that time?
About 35, 36. All right, I'm 28 pounds overweight. Things are changing in the firehouse. Guys are getting younger, stronger, bigger. I found running. I was an athlete my whole life, but I found running now, and now there was nothing that could clear your head better than a 60-minute run in the park. You didn't need anything. It wasn't as complicated as it is today. Like, you have your goose. What do you have? What do you do? What pills are you using?
Yeah.
We just went out and ran. And
well, it should be that way now anyway. Yeah. But that's a different conversation.
So anyway, I started getting into endurance sports, triathlons, and running and making every race count and all this stuff. And lo and behold, I started using my bicycle as my means of transportation. And it was Christmas time, 9 years ago. And the New York City Transit Authority decided to go on strike, shut the city down. Millions of tourists, no one can get around. The city was jam-packed. And it was like 18 degrees. I got on my bike, and I wasn't that strong of a person. 18 degrees, I was getting in my car.
Right, but just to hit the pause button here for a second, you're kind of glossing over the fact that you weren't just out running and riding your bike. You were killing it, right? You did Ironman Lake Placid. You qualified for Boston running. You were doing very well as an endurance athlete. You weren't just dabbling. You were excelling.
Yeah, I was excelling. I was excelling, and I thought I could have done better. So I was on a mission,
right,
to do better. So this particular day was just transportation, and private bus that was hired to get workers past restriction zones in the city. Made a wrong turn. This guy made a judgment call in life that I'm sure he's upset about, but he just turned down a block that he shouldn't have turned down. He didn't see me. And next thing you know, the laws of physics, as it comes to the accident investigators, didn't exist with me. They normally say that in an accident like this, I would have bounced off the bus, and the second impact is what would have killed me. Instead, I got sucked under the bus.
So the bus is going up Third Avenue. It takes a right on 52nd Street, and you're there in the bike lane.
Yep.
And instead of bouncing off, you go underneath the bus and get dragged.
Got swept under, and he just kind of parked on me.
Right. And all right, so do you have memory of that happening, or is it all a blur?
It's a bit of a blur. Over time, anything that I've been able to translate to other people has been told to me. I do remember, and I have dreams about it all the time, putting my left hand up in the air as the bus was on my left side, and like kind of reaching up to slap the side of the bus as, no, stop. And then that was it. I do have very vague memories of talking to, again, it's a small city, even though there's 8 billion people here. I knew all the firemen on the east side. So as soon as they pulled my Nomex hood off and I heard one of the firemen say, oh my God, it's Matty Long from 43 Truck, I closed my eyes, almost to say I'm in good hands now. And that's it. Then the next 6 weeks I was in a medically induced coma and, not knowing anything.
Yeah, it wasn't just that, you were in an accident. You were about as close to death as somebody's going to come.
Absolutely. I mean, my doctors say 1%. But I'm still friendly with all my doctors, and they when we go out to dinner, they so calmly brush over what happened to me. I'm like, hey, I'm sitting right here. They're like, you were an academic exercise. I'm like, what? I'm here.
Yeah, what does that?
Sorry.
What does that
Yeah.
mean? Because it was such an anomaly that you would actually survive.
Yeah, he just had his residents and his interns or whatever you call them in the medical profession, and he's had them there saying, okay, what would we do for this guy if he was going to live?
If he was going to live.
And they all I said, how do you guys do that? I mean, that's amazing that you can just shut it off and do that. I'm blessed and honored that and I feel privileged that I went to the greatest, or what I think is the greatest hospital in the world. But how do you can't teach that?
Well, it's almost an emotional defense mechanism, right? If they're going to be seeing people every single day, they can't get emotionally invested in it. They wouldn't be able to function, right?
I agree 100%. And one of the things he told me too later on was, he goes, I was more concerned about your life, not your quality of life. So, because afterwards, and I leave the hospital all attached with different tubes and things, he was like, I was like, why would you help me so I could live like this? I'm not living. And he's like, well, that's not my problem. My problem is to save your life. My job is to save your life. He goes, which we didn't think we'd do. You were an academic exercise. We were just going through the motions, and we left the room multiple times to come back thinking you'd be expired. And, your heart rate's going to 28 beats a minute.
This guy's still alive.
My doctor was a marathon runner, and he was out there doing it, 4.5, 5 hour guy. And when he went outside to tell my mom and dad that they're doing the best they can, we have about a 1% chance of survival. And my mom was like, my mom's stubborn Irish Catholic woman. She just said to the doctor, said, Doc, he has to survive. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, well, he just qualified for Boston, and I don't know if you run, but that's a really big deal, and he's got to run Boston in April. God. And his doctor was like, we'll go back inside.
I don't think you really understand what's going on here.
But he gave me a 5% chance.
So run down the list of injuries.
All right, we'll go from the feet up. My left foot, leg, from heel to hip, broken. Compound fractures. All fractures were compound, skinned open, bones out. Tib, fib, femur. My right side of the pelvis was shattered. My abdominal wall was torn out of my body by the bike. I was basically cut open from stem to stern. So from my sternum to my rectum, I was ripped in half. My right shoulder was crushed. And thank God, no head trauma. Thank God, no head trauma. But that's pretty. The bulk of the life-threatening injuries was not the broken bones. It was the bike cutting me from my sternum to my rectum, severing my femoral artery, severing sacral nerves. The major pathway through your body, mind to muscle, just cut in half.
Right. And so when you come out of this coma and start to realize the gravity of your circumstance, what's going through your head?
I don't think I realized it at first, because I kind of remember the first thing I said to the doctor when I saw him was, when can I go home? Meanwhile, I'm resting my arms on piece of metal that I just thought was like a shelf connected to my bed, and then I realized it was an external fixator holding my pelvis together. And I realized it was a part of me. And at that point, I was kind of like, why? Why me? And I don't really think that I don't want to start a pity party for myself, and I never really did. Maybe I had my own, but it was, why did I live? Not why did this happen to me, but okay, it happened. It happens to people all the time. In fact, we could be sitting here now and something could be happening on the west side of the city, But why am I still here? Why am I left to go through this? 42 surgeries. Why? And that is something that just I played out in my head over and over and over again. Like, what did I do? Why am I deserving of this?
Like on some karmic level.
Yeah. I just couldn't figure it out, and I wanted to, but I couldn't.
Do you feel like you've answered that question for yourself now?
Well, I think, yeah. I know what the answer would be. We would reaffirm. Yeah. I think that when I look back at my life, all the things I've been through, I was rolling around life through the motions. Was I successful? Yes, in some people's eyes I was. I was a fireman. I owned 2 or 3 bars and restaurants in Manhattan. I was single, so dating wasn't a problem. In fact, maybe it was a problem. Maybe I did it too much. I don't know. but so yeah.
I got some of your ex-girlfriends outside. Right here. We're going to bring them in, yeah.
Behind curtain. I'll take curtain number 1, please. But I think that I started to really trying to think back and like, well, why? What was I doing? Like, if it had ended, what would they have said about me?
What would your legacy have been?
Yeah, and I don't think it would have been much. He was a good time guy.
Everybody loved Matty.
Yeah, and now post-accident, I'm fortunate enough that I had this. By no means do I think I did this on my own. Okay, I had a support group. I had tremendous family, fire department family, and was touched with written letters or emails from around the world. How this little fireman story, of don't give up, spread, helped me not quit. And for some reason, going through the endurance world and pushing myself for Ironman and to get fast enough for Boston, I built strength to not quit this journey. And now it's funny is I'll go talk and I'll talk to 250 people and there's Q&A and no one raises their hands. And then I said, it's okay. I said, I'm going to be in the elevator and someone's going to come in going, oh, I can't believe how much you told me. I can't talk. I got to tell you something. And I'm like, well, why didn't you raise your hand? And I help them. But now
it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
I think it taps into people's fears and makes them question what their own life trajectory is all about, and that's something that most people are not comfortable discussing in a public forum.
True. But the short answer of that is, I feel like I have a purpose now, and it's not going to be a world-saving purpose, but it could be a life-saving purpose for one person, and if I can do that,
well, certainly it's already been that.
I would like to think it has. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you look back on it now? Like in addiction recovery, you always hear the guy who says, like, I'm a grateful alcoholic, right? And then when I was new in the program, I was like, what does that mean? Why would you be grateful for something like that? I understand that now. So I guess my question is, do you look back on what has happened to you with a level of gratitude, or do you what is your perspective on it? Do you feel like this has been a gift, or is it still something it's a burden? Do you still ask yourself why?
I don't think I ever looked at it as a gift, but I have been asked if I could have that bus miss me. If I can go back in time and have that bus miss me, knowing what I know now, would I? And my honest answer is no. Knowing what I know now, the way I've touched people and my own life. Never thought I'd be married. I'm married now. Never thought I'd have a child. I have a child. All that would go away if I could have that bus miss me. Mm-hmm. So, no. I would say yes. It's a gift. It's a gift that's personal to me and my journey, and has, quite frankly, shaped the person I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Does that color your idea of spirituality or faith, or whether it's religion or some kind of non-dogmatic version of that, this idea of everything for a reason?
It definitely strengthened that, 100%. I do believe, I'm a firm believer, everything happens for a reason, and I don't believe that everyone answers the call when they have an event like this, or when they have any kind of event, and it could be very small. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that in my life before the accident, there were plenty of times where I've been called to step up and, hey, you have a fight here, or you could stay in the bar and continue to drink your beers and have a good time, be party time. So yeah, it definitely strengthened my sense of faith, and I believe in God. I believe that he let me or allowed me to survive this accident so that I can keep someone else from quitting. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And when does the idea of starting to try to, I want to get back to the timeline, the idea of wanting to run again, certainly you have this, very long, protracted series of procedures, operations, this idea that, you're going to be crippled, probably in a wheelchair, all of these sorts of things that you're having to weather. I want to walk through that to get to the point where the idea of actually running a marathon starts to enter your mind.
Okay, so I spent 5 months in the hospital. When I was hurt, I was probably about 176, 177 pounds. Mm-hmm. Really in good shape, and physically and aerobically, I was in perfect shape. And that had all dwindled away by the time I am exiting the hospital. I'm 122 pounds. Can stand for maybe 2 to 3 minutes at a time.
How long were you in the hospital?
5 months.
5 months.
Yeah, 5 months and 2 days, to be exact. I think at that point I've gone through maybe about 30, 33 surgeries. And it was time to go home, knowing there'd be more surgeries. So there was quite a long period of time where my battles became more mental. When in the hospital, you're being taken care of. I had a button. Anything I needed, I hit the button. But now you're home is when I started to mentally realize that, wow, this could be the rest of my life. So there was some very low moments where I wished that I had not lived.
Mm-hmm. What was the lowest moment?
We can just be open, and I guess the lowest moment is when I had a colostomy bag and I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm prepping for a surgery. So I don't know why I still had to clean my system out, but I'm just emptying myself all over my bathroom because I can't physically move, and I have my number 9. That's what I call him, my younger brother Eddie, number 9, taking care of me. Cleaning me, cleaning up after me, and once that was said and done, I just remember saying, I looked over at the counter and I had the medication and the volume of medication to end it. Mm-hmm. And I never, well, what if I didn't have enough? Then what happens? Then I'm a burden to everyone. So those thoughts came and gone quick. I never battled with them too much. They got in my head and I'm like, what am I? You're crazy. You survived now. You got to get your act together. And it wasn't until a couple months later after that my mom really gave me the old tough, hey, this is it. Enough's enough. Got to do what you got to do with your life. You got to make it the best you can.
Good Catholic mom, slapping you around.
Slapping me around.
Wake up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And basically said, if you want to be a miserable son of a bitch, do it by yourself. And that hit home. And then I started to think about all the things that...
Because she's not going to be codependent in this sort of,
Yeah, she wanted nothing to do with it. Right. She wanted nothing to do with the pity. She's like, look, you're here, you're alive, we're happy. You should be happy. Blah, blah, blah. You didn't get hit by the bus, but but we're here. We were there every night, every day, and we're here now if you want us to be. You know, much like your journey where your parents said, hey, when you're ready, call us. But until then,
right,
you're out. So it was pretty much the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the attitude changed. At that point, the attitude changed. I stopped thinking about the things that were taken from me. I stopped thinking about the words I can't. And now I joke about it when I talk. I say, if you wake up every morning and say you can't go back to bed, I said, don't go to work because you're useless. Just call the boss.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking an I can't day.
Mm-hmm.
And the attitude became I will. And let's say 2 to 3 months of really not going through the motions of therapy anymore, really pay attention to the therapist, really pushing myself. And when they were happy I stood and walked 6 steps, I was happy I walked 6 steps. And I said, okay, now what would I do before my accident? Well, let's walk 7 steps. Mm-hmm. And let's walk 8. And now let's do those 8 steps faster and on and on and on. And then eventually I said to myself, enough's enough. I have to close this page of my life and move on. And the only way I'm going to do it is if I'm able to run again. I don't want the bus to take something I loved away from me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll leave it on my own terms.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about the physical therapy and rehab, what about the mental and emotional? Like where, you know, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the shrinks, the emotional aspect of trying to repair yourself.
I went a couple times to a psychiatrist, and I don't think he was the right match for me.
Yeah, it sounds like that was a misfire.
Yeah, it was a big misfire, and I just, you know, I'm kind of that guy. You know, maybe get blindsided in a conversation and you miss all the facts around it, and all I heard was, you know, my tennis elbow keeps me from playing tennis, and I was like, did this freaking guy just tell me his tennis elbow? And that's all that was in my head, and I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, you get the wrong guy.
Yeah. And then I learned that, you know, sometimes the best therapy is right in front of you, and here I am being driven to therapy by a fireman, a friend of mine, who has a rare blood disease, you know, after being down at 9/11 for months and months. And his fate is unknown, maybe uncurable. And, you know, I'm feeling bad for myself because I'm going to may live in a wheelchair. So me and him started to talk. And that became my therapy. Mm-hmm. You know, I kept sitting here looking at him saying, you know, how do you get up every day, come and take care of me when you don't know what lies ahead for you?
Right.
So,
yeah, that's powerful, man. I mean, that's a lot like, you know, I mean, that's basically the foundation of addiction recovery. One addict or alcoholic talking to another.
Yeah.
Being able to share that common experience.
We
find strength in that.
We did. We shared a lot of stories and a lot of our fears, and he helped me through a lot of things. I mean, I think he might have been one of the first firemen that I was able to cry in front of. Mm-hmm. You know, and that helped. That helped, and that pushed me. And I said to it, I haven't been to a psychiatrist since. Mm-hmm. But no, I'm not saying that I don't suffer from any post-traumatic stress or anything. I just deal with it differently.
Right.
You know, and I'm lucky enough that I could still deal with it on a bike. And, you know.
Yeah. So how did Ironman, marathon running, that experience of training, pushing your body, you know, understanding your physical limitations and all of that, how did that play into the physical recovery, going from 6 steps to 7 steps and being able to maintain focus and positivity?
Mm-hmm. Well, at first it wasn't any help at all because I couldn't let go of the athlete I was or the athlete I was becoming.
So it was actually getting in the way.
It was getting in the way because as my therapist, you know, one of the things we started to do, and I had... When the wheels started turning, and I said, I was talking to your wife earlier about it, and I said, you know, I started researching everything. I'm doing everything I can to get better. So when some people say, oh, did you try acupuncture? I'm like, I did. Did it work? I go, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why don't you know? I said, because I did acupuncture. I did everything together. So I'm going to say, yes, it worked, you know, for me. So I remember when my one therapist, I had hired my therapist to come home. And 1 day a week from the hospital, when I was home, I was doing therapy, 3 days in the hospital, gym 3 days, and then 2 days a week, the therapist came to me. And we would just go out and walk. and went from 2 crutches. We'd walk around the block, and I go, time me. And next week she'd come back. What was that time? You write that down? Well, I kept my journal. So when she'd get happy that I walked around a city block in 13 minutes, I started to say, well, I'm 2 miles in already. The old Matt's 2 miles in, 13 minutes. Come on. This is nonsense. Don't get happy for me. This is not a good time.
But it's about changing your perspective. It's not about like, oh, I'm qualifying for Boston, or, how am I going to get to Kona as an Ironman athlete? It's how am I going to go around the block, 30 seconds faster than I did last week.
Right. And that's when things started to tick and change. And that's when I had to say, for now, I had to say goodbye to the memory of the athlete that was before the bus. And say, forget about his results, but don't forget about the work he put in to become that athlete. So let's put that work in here and get faster. And let's put that work in fast and get rid of 1 crutch and get on your own feet.
So how did you flick that switch? Like, was there something happen, or was that a gradual kind of realization that was the attitude you were going to have to adopt?
It was very gradual. But it definitely came from the 2 therapists, the 2 girls that helped me. They'd come in, they'd eventually tell me, look, this is emotionally draining for us. You're making us cry every time we leave here. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because you're so hard to accept the progress. You don't see it. You shouldn't be alive. And you're walking around the block. Accept that. And I was like, wow. I was like, you know what? You're right.
Find the gratitude in that.
I said, you're right. I'm sorry. And I didn't know I was making you cry. And I said, you're right. And let's set some goals now. Let's set some things, let's put some things in order. And, I said to myself, once I was walking without, or at least down to a cane, that's when I started to look for other places to go and leave the city for a little while. And that's when I said to myself, you know what? I will run again. Yeah, and that's it. And they were like, all right. So I did it. Yeah, I went out to Arizona. Trained. I treated myself like an athlete. I rented a small apartment near the Arizona State. Found a place that would accept me for therapy, and I just on an email sent them my story, sent them newspaper links, and I said I want to run again. And these 2 one therapist and 1 strength coach, emailed me back saying we'd never tell anyone they couldn't run. And I flew out there. That was it.
That was it. Just that one little, that little ray of hope.
Yep. The other places I had emailed, some of them wrote back, set realistic goals. You've been through a lot. And I was just like, delete. I wanted to email them back, and it just would have gone nowhere.
An argument.
Yeah. So when I saw this email, I said, I called them up. I said, where's a good place to live there? And they said, well, why don't you go down by Arizona State? And I said, okay. So I flew out there with a friend, and he flew home the next day. We got an apartment. I got a car with handicap controls. I started driving again. I haven't driven a car in 2.5 years. And that was it. I told them my goal. I'm here for 3 months. I said my goal is to get strong enough to run. And the day I left, I ran my first mile.
Wow.
22 minutes.
Wow. So what was it that they had to kind of put back together? Like, what were the mechanics of trying to get you from somebody who was on crutches to somebody who could actually run?
With them, I went back to basic strength building, and 3 days a week was therapy. There was some massage therapy involved. More the functional movements that you would get in the hospital. Let's work on your rotator cuff. Let's work on your hip. Let's work on your hamstring. And then the 2 days a week with the strength coach was his method of basically, look, your body doesn't just move up and down. It moves in multiple directions. So let's start teaching those muscles. They have to operate in multiple directions. And we started, he calls it triplex training.
Right.
And I was doing very simple stuff in a stretch cage, just lunging to the right, lunging to the left, turning and twisting. And it eventually started to work, started firing up the muscles. In his theory, and I agree now wholeheartedly, the body wants to be healthy. And when one part of the body can't do its job, the muscles around it say, all right, how can we pitch in? So to this day, I don't have a glute. So like I'm looking at you and I'm sitting on my left butt cheek,
right,
just to keep me level. If I go like that, I'm down. I have no muscle on the right side for my right glute. So all the muscles around it pitch in to
Have
help
to
me walk.
compensate, right?
So that's what we taught it to do.
And what kind of range of motion do you? I mean, you have a titanium rod running down
The
your
left leg.
Mm-hmm.
And a 9-inch titanium screw going through my pelvis from the right side. But my range of motion is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it may be more so on my right side because my pelvis was reset almost a half inch to an inch higher. So there's a lot of movement on my right side that I can't control. If I do stretch and stuff like that, I do it with a band or a rope that I learned at the Wharton Performance Center here in the city because they took me to the next level. And I control it because once I get to a certain point, it could be like, whoa. And I'm like, what happened to your leg? I'm like, I'm sorry.
But when you do, so all right, so when you finally accomplish that goal and you run that 1 mile, I mean, this is a watershed moment. I mean, this isn't just, it's not just, hey, I want to run again because I love running. I mean, this is a symbolic, accomplishment that I think means much more than just, I've repaired myself enough that I can move my body better than I could 3 months prior.
Yeah, it was. I was frightened, to be honest with you. I was frightened. I said to them, well, we had no attempt at running before this. No attempt. And I said, well, I guess I'll fall 3 times. If I fall 3 times, we stop and walk back and go back to work. But I ran the whole way without falling. And at the very moment of my last step, I looked at my watch and said, we still got 20 minutes left on a therapy session. Let's go inside and go to work because I want to run the marathon. And they were like, excuse me? I said, yeah. This was a part of the steps I wanted to take. I said, I need to cross that finish line. I said, I don't care how long it takes me, but I need to finish my marathon.
Mm-hmm. And the reaction.
And they were pretty cool about it. They both actually said, Mark, the therapist, was like, you run the marathon, I'll be there. I said, okay. And I said, Kyle? And he goes, I'll try. I said, okay. Mm-hmm. So left Arizona in April.
But hold on a second. So is that floating around in your head like, all right, I'm going to get through this 1 mile, I'm going to make this announcement? I mean, obviously you're thinking about this, but are you thinking like, if I can do this 1 mile, then I'm going to like say that the marathon is my goal? Or was that a spontaneous sort of thing that came to
Complete spontaneous. I had always thought about it. It was like, will I ever run again? Blah, 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 finish the marathon. But the way it came out was complete spontaneous.
Like just the elation of getting through that 1 mile.
Getting through the 1 mile and then knowing to myself, knowing who I was as a person before. I'm very goal-driven. I need something to look forward to. Otherwise, I'll falling through the motions again in life. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I completed that, and their question was, well, what do you want to do now? I said, that's it. I want to run the marathon. I said, but we got 25 minutes left, so let's go back to work. Mm-hmm. And we started strength building again. And the next day, I got on my plane and we came home.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started researching, who takes me to the next step in New York?
Mm-hmm. And who was that?
All fingers pointed to Jim and Phil Wharton of the Wharton Performance Center. They got a place in Arizona and they got a place here. And then what he did was he took me from what I did in Arizona, which was more one-dimensional, therapeutic. He took me to more... I'm sorry, over there I was on all different planes and 3-dimensional exercises, and he took me to, let's concentrate on your weaknesses. Let's get the muscles, let's give the muscles that have been helping you a break, and let's work on the hamstring that doesn't work. Let's work on the glute that doesn't work. Let's fire these up. Let's start thinking about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And when I went to him for an evaluation, he gave me a piece of paper. He wrote down, he goes, write down your medical problems and issues, and I wrote... First of all, it was only 2 lines, so I just wrote "fucked" and put an exclamation point. This Jim came in. He's like, fuck, "This guy's fucked." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. There's nothing else. I just don't want to write anymore about what's wrong." I told him my whole story, and he goes, "Damn, all right." He goes, "Let's unfuck you. Let's unfuck you."
Yeah, let's tell a new story.
Yep.
I like that. I mean, tell me about the pain. Like, there's the challenge of trying to run this 1 mile, but like, what are you experiencing physically when you're trying to do that?
at this point, I'm still taking some pain meds.
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of meds are you on? What does that look like?
Yeah, I was still on a low dose of Oxy and a slow release, like Percocet, that I learned pretty much by myself when and when not to take it, so that I would get through the training session or get through the night, of sleep that you need. Because to this day, I talk to everyone I train or people I train with. I'm like, what you're doing now is great, but if you don't rest tomorrow, you're not building yourself. You're not making yourself any stronger. They think they're going to get it now if they keep training. So I was able to deal with the pain on a day-to-day basis going through the training regimen and the therapy. It was the pain that I suffered after attempts of running and, going in. Because, look, now at this point now, I'm doing pain management, but now I'm trying to get onto a marathon plan, in 5 months. And, it's a lot harder to run slow than it is to get it over with in 3 hours.
And you're out there for so much longer.
And I'm going to be out there for double the amount of time. And I was out there for 7.5 hours. So the day after my runs, my recovery days were brutal, were really brutal. And it all stemmed from my lower back or that right side glute stabilizer muscle area that were gone and non-existent. After a couple, not even miles, after a half mile, which would take me, 8 to 10 minutes, the swagger I had when I run just crushed my back. You're exposing yourself to injuring yourself in all kinds of other crazy ways. Trying to do that, right? So, but it's also this transition of going from rehabilitative to being kind of proactively athletic, right? It's taking you out of the context of we're rehabilitating you after this accident to, okay, you're an athlete and we're preparing you for an event. Like that's a mental shift as well as a sort of a physical and kind of program, kind of alteration, the way that you're perceiving how you're approaching your day-to-day, physical routine. Absolutely. And going back to a question we talked about before, now this is where Ironman marathon training before the accident starts to help me.
Right. So now you're starting to think, like, are you starting to feel like, you can tap into this? I know this, like this feels familiar. Like I'm back in that lane.
Right. I'm not worried about the time I'm producing in my efforts right now, but I know that I can go the distance. I know that, I've been on those 100-mile bike rides by myself to train myself an Ironman. When your head starts telling you, hey, what are you doing out here?
Right.
Maybe you should just pull over and stop. You fight those demons. So I said, I've beaten those demons before. I can push myself to the point where others would sit down and take that break. So I just need to know that I got to do it, and it's going to take a lot longer now.
And what are your buddies telling you now? And like, what's your family saying? I mean, are they being supportive?
Yeah, most of the people were 100% supportive to me. Now, whether they, when I left the room, said, what's he thinking?
Or we're worried about what's going to happen if this doesn't work out.
Right. So I didn't know too much of that. I had my two friends, Frank Carino and Noel Flynn, both sub 3 hour marathon runners. They were with me pretty much through my training, and they were going to run the race with me that day. It was like 2 nights before the marathon. My brother, Jim, who was also a fireman, he calls me up. And at this point in training, I got to 14 miles. And it took me about 4 hours. So Jim Wharton says, and I shut down. Like I had to be, actually, thank God for cell phones and some of the modern changes in life. I had to call my buddy and say, look, I'm sitting on the side of the road in the park. I can't move. And my hip locked up. My back was seized up. They literally came, got me, put me in a cab, picked me up in a firehouse, and put me in a garbage pail full of ice. And so I told Jim, I said, Jim Wharton, I said, I couldn't get past 14 miles. We have 2 months or 5 weeks. I said, I don't, what are we going to do? And he just said, yeah, we're gonna adapt. We're gonna adapt. We know we can get it done. We know we can finish. We know you can keep going. He goes, now we just got to take care of the body, get you to healthy. So we dialed it down, and it was more of a mental thing than it was a physical thing now for me to complete that marathon. But so 2 nights after that event, my brother calls me up and says, the newspapers, the local newspapers are making a story about this fireman making an incredible comeback less than 3 years from near fatal accident. He said to me, what are you going to say to them if you fail? And I said, excuse me, what did you just say? He said, well, Jim, he goes, Matt, if you don't finish, they're going to want to know why. You're a story no matter what now. And what if you don't finish? And I said to him, did you wake up this morning and say you're going to kick me in the balls? He goes, that's what you just did.
Like, well, how is that helpful?
I'm like, we kind of had the chuckle like we just did. And he said, no, I'm just trying to be honest with you. And I said, okay, I appreciate it. I said, it took me a little bit of time. And I said, you know what I'm going to tell him? I said, 3 years ago, I was supposed to die. If I finish 20 miles tomorrow and leave 6.2 on the course, it's not 6.2 miles of failure, but 20 miles of success behind me. And that's the way I'm going to look at it.
How about just showing up at the start line? You know what I mean?
Some would think that was a success thing there.
It goes back to this idea that I know you feel strongly about, which is it's the journey, man. It's the journey. Like you had the balls to stand up, the spine to say, I'm going to tackle this and take this on. And yeah, I might fail. I don't know, but I'm going to show up for it. And, 5 weeks earlier, I seized up at 14 miles, and here I am. I'm still going to do this. And whether or not you succeed or fail, I think is irrelevant. And you can't control how, the narrative that the media is going to adapt around that. But I would imagine, they're going to still celebrate the fact that you even tried. And I think, what we haven't really talked about is that you took this on very much in the spotlight because, in the wake of your accident, this was a big story, right? Yeah. So people were paying attention. People knew who you were. They're watching you. Right. And so the pressure that came along with that, whether you cave and decide, I can't take this on, or you decide to rise to the occasion, that's a story regardless. Yeah,
you're right. And it's funny that you say that because part of the reasons for me leaving New York to go to Arizona was to try to get away from that. What was the icing on the cake one night, and my daily routine became, okay, get the crutches on, get taken care of, get cleaned up, and now I'm going to take the 1 block journey to Starbucks to get my coffee in the morning and walk back to my apartment. And that was part of me getting out into the fresh air. And the homeless guy outside Starbucks sees me walking in and he goes, my man, you're the guy that got hit by the bus. And I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, man, I've been praying for you. And I'm like, well, I'm praying for you too. I said, thank you very much. And I went inside. I'm like, even the homeless guy knows who I am. So I need to get away.
That's so funny. All right. So you get that phone call, you have that 14-mile, experience. I mean, was that still your longest run leading up into the marathon? So you didn't try to go out there and trump that before race day?
Nope. I didn't try again. I kept any outdoor running, to between 3 and 5 miles. And we were down to 3 days a week at that. And then everything else was done either just to build some aerobic power. And I was swimming, I was doing indoor cycling, and I was on the elliptical. So I would, to mix it up, I would do maybe all 3 for an hour, or there were times when I was on an elliptical for 3 hours.
Right, but just not as much pounding, pavement pounding.
Right.
And the recovery time has to be far greater. I mean, what else you're doing? I would imagine you're doing ice baths. The rest aspect of what you were doing had to really require a bunch of focus.
Yeah, 100%. And I was doing ice baths. I was doing acupuncture this time. I was doing everything to try to regenerate nerves. I was taking every recovery supplement that you read about.
Right.
Oh, someone's doing this. Okay, I'll do that. No, put your left hand in the air when you do that. I'm like, anything.
Yeah.
But this worked for me. I was trying it all. I was really trying it all. So, more importantly, I was mentally focused, and you're right. You're 100% right. Looking back, it is about the journey more than it is about the finish. But my journey wasn't over until I crossed that finish line. Mentally, it kind of gave me this victory over so maybe it wasn't really about crossing the finish line of the marathon, but giving me the victory over the bus to say, well, you didn't take running from me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not fast anymore. I don't even look good while I'm running, but you didn't take it away from me. Mm-hmm. You know, I still have that if I want it.
Yeah, it doesn't have that power over you.
Right. And, you know, I obviously went further from that day, but at some point it turned around and said, well, these are the things I love. These are the things that strengthened me. These are the things that gave me enjoyment, and I still have them. But now I'm leaving them on my terms, not because you hit me.
Right. And when you show up on race day, are you thinking, I'm finishing this thing? Or are you thinking, I don't know, man, but I'm here. I'm gonna give it a try. Like, what's the mental state?
Yeah, Marathon Sunday, you know, they gave me a 3-hour head start with the Achilles track athletes. And I was grateful because I was like, oh, you know, the firemen are all going to be done. Everyone's going to be done out partying already. Like I said, everything, party, right. Marathon. So I had appealed to the Achilles Track Club, and they were grateful enough to let me start with them. And there was about 30 of us, hand cycles, wheelchair, amputees, blind runners. It was amazing. And from the naked eye, nothing really looked, until I started to move. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't think anything was wrong with me. Mary Wittenberg, the head of New York Roadrunners, she gave me a big shout out as she started that little group of Achilles athletes. And I used to tell my friends, you know, they like, oh, challenged athletes. I'm like, well, I'm not a challenged athlete. I said, I'm an athlete with challenges. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference. So that's the way I kind of looked at it. And I didn't know if I'd finish. Okay, but multiple little things happened along, people I saw. In fact, so since I had a 3-hour head start, the firemen weren't even at the starting line yet.
Oh, wow.
They were still at the hotel in the city, loading their buses. And as I'm going over the Arizona Bridge, line of buses stopped. And they're out the windows yelling my name, waving their flags. And I was just like, wow, like, go, Maddie. They all passed me at mile 16. So that was a kick in the balls right there.
Yeah.
But,
well, you got to be that guy who's like, you know, here come the elite women. Here come the...
Yeah, that was my first up-close and personal view of Carrot Goucher.
Right.
So I was like, wow.
Paula Radcliffe.
Right. She's pretty cute.
Yeah, wow. So you know, walk me through that experience. I mean, you know, there's nothing like the New York Marathon. I mean, just the incredible, you know, environment, the supportive, you know, crowds the entire way. I mean, there's no other race like it. And for you to be this hometown story, you know, that everybody is kind of, you know, they're up to speed on, everybody knows what's going on with you. I mean, it had to be, you know, despite the incredible challenges and struggles of trying to get through those 26 miles to kind of absorb that support along the way, had to carry you quite a bit.
It absolutely did, and luckily enough that I've involved myself in New York City so much through firemen, through growing up in Brooklyn, that you know,
being
almost
like, we didn't even talk about you being like at Ground Zero and 9/11, the experience of 9/11 and all of that. I mean, it's just you're part of the fabric of this city.
Yeah, so, you're right. That's a good way to look at it. It's true, and fortunate for me that 26 mile journey, at every point there was someone there that at this point, where the same reason why I left New York City is why what I needed to finish this marathon, I needed someone to say, "There's Matt,
right?
You know, there's that guy."
Yeah.
And
I'm sure you got a lot of that.
I got a lot. I got a lot of it for the first 9 miles because it was just us. It was just me, Noel, Frank, and Charlie Butler, the guy who co-wrote my book with me. And so we got a lot of that in the early morning. And then when the runners started coming by me, you know, I started with 30 Achilles Track Club athletes, and I finished in 40,000th place. Mm-hmm. So 39,970 people passed me, and a good chunk of them patted me on the back as they went by or gave me words of encouragement. So they pushed me through a lot of the early miles, and then you hit mile 14 to 16, you're on First Avenue. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I just lived for 5 months in a hospital. My therapist, they were out, you know, on the avenue, cheering me on at the finish line. My doctors and his family were there. And one of the best moments of my finish I was emotional. I cried, and my family was there. But one of the best moments is when my trauma surgeon, Dean Lorich, I think he's 3 girls now, and his baby was born just a month or 2 after I was hurt. And he had to leave his home during Christmas. He had to get his wife out of bed rest, and to get to the hospital just to help be a part of saving my life. And he looked at his daughter and said, his older daughters, and said, "This is why Daddy's not home." And I looked at them and I said, "Thank you for understanding that." Because that's tough. He's a trauma surgeon. He just is not a guy you make an appointment with. And that was one of my best moments with him. At least I'm still friends with him, and I'm very grateful that they sacrificed their lives and had their calling to be the best that they could be.
Extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to kind of go, oh, Matt and his, amazingly inspirational story, and look what he did, and that belies the fact that there is this extraordinary team of people, behind every success, whether athletic, professional, or otherwise. Like, you don't get there alone, and it's cool to hear you recognize all the people that helped you on your journey.
You definitely don't get there alone. You don't. Whether you meet them when you're falling down that ladder again, I don't know. But you don't achieve true success by yourself. And whether that's happiness or financial success, whatever, you don't. And that person, I'd be wary of the person who says, "I did this by myself. I'm self-made, and screw you," because that's what he would do, or she would do.
Yeah, self-made is an illusion, I think. So what was the feeling when you crossed the finish line?
At first I remember the finish line, and there's some controversy around my finish. It was probably a bad judgment call, but I don't know if you ever seen the videos, Rich, but there was an incident right before the finish. Now, let me not defend my actions, but I'll tell you them because it's part of what I did, so you have to own up to it. I'm out there for 7 hours and 18 minutes. At mile 25.8, I stopped. And didn't say a word. I was in pain. I wanted to quit. And I only had, 0.4 of a mile to go. I wanted to quit. I really did. And the guys, now at this point, I was only running with 3 other people. But at this point, a so-called entourage has come around me. Other people have given up their day to run with me. And now the pack grew to maybe 17 people. And, I would say that my vision was blurred. I would say that, I was not thinking straight. And we get into the park. I start running again. And there's a gentleman jumping up and down at the finish line. And not in any hurry to finish. In fact, he had a video camera, and he was just kind of videoing the crowd, applauding at the line. And I just kept saying to myself that, I had a path, and he's there. And I'm not going to fall down at the finish. Like, this is, where I'm going. So I kind of Heisman trophied this runner. And went on my way and crossed the finish line, dropped down the floor, do 10 push-ups. Because I wanted to do push-ups before I started bawling, crying, which didn't help because I got up and bawled and cried anyway. But it was a big controversy about the push and why did I push him. You go back to the videotape. He wasn't in your way. Do I regret pushing him? Yes. Do I own up to the fact that I pushed him? Yes.
Were you delirious? Were you,
I could come up with 1,000 excuses. Instead,
Right.
I just decided to say, in the internet world of slow twitch and the people that were killing me for it and calling me a bad person, I just came out and basically said, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have done it. And if I could apologize to this runner, I would.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from somebody who has some experience with being delirious in the midst of an endurance challenge, it brings out a certain aspect of who you are that might not always be so pretty. I mean, I had, a similar experience when I did Epic 5, and I was beyond tired and could barely, function. And that's what they always say, like in these ultra endurance races, don't bring your friends as your crew members, because
they won't be your friends anymore.
There's dark moments, where then you come out of it and you're like, I can't believe I behaved like that. So, I think that for anybody who hasn't sort of walked a mile in the shoes of what that is like, that they should reserve judgment on that. But, I haven't seen the video, but thanks for being honest and open about that. But, so you have this extreme, extraordinary experience of finishing this marathon. Then it's this big story. Then Runner's World writes this, remarkable article about it. I mean, and that's my understanding is that's what kind of paved the way for you to write the book and everything that's come from that. I mean, is that how that came about?
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, we were working on the article before I even dreamed of running the marathon again. The 2000, and so I was 2005 that my last marathon got hurt 2005. So the 2006 marathon, Charlie Butler was working for Runner's World, and he was doing a story of the gangs of New York, the different running teams in New York. And two of the teams were the police and the firemen. So they had made shirts this year. They had shirts that said "Go Long" on the back. And it was for me, and they didn't make a stink about it. They just did it. I didn't know about it until race day. And Charlie was asking him, "So what's this Go Long?" And one of my friends, Tom Grimshaw, who's a little bit older than me but was a big influence in my running, told him the story. And he's like, "Wow, I'd like to get in touch with him, another story." And Charlie and I had met a couple of times, and I was still not in a really good place. So the meetings we had were, he was still intrigued, but I was kind of like, whatever. And then I disappeared on him for about 6 months. And I went to Arizona, and I did my thing, and I came home, and I emailed him and said, "Charlie, it's Matt Long. I know I haven't been around, but still interested?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not sure. What are you doing?" I go, "The marathon." And he's like, "Hello?" Email stopped, the phone code, and we sat down and did the story. And it wound up being the largest article Runner's World ever published on a single athlete. It was like 14 pages. And then then Runner's World and Charlie and I turned it into the long run.
Into the book. And the book, had an extraordinary life. It was an incredible success. And I'm sure, opened up tons of doors for you. I mean, how is your life? I mean, I would say how has it changed, but like, how has it not changed? I mean, everything about your life is different.
Yeah, I've lived a good life. I really have. But being able to spread any bit of inspiration is truly a gift that I'm happy to have. So the book, getting my story out a little further. Don't get me wrong. There's some places I go and it's this is great because it's gonna put the kids through school or it's gonna pay some bills. But the bottom line is when I get out there and I'm able to help one person, and I always get an email. It doesn't matter. You get the email. You get just stopped in the elevator, wherever, and they tell you their story, and then they realize that they're not the only ones out there having a tough time.
One of the things that I always talk about is the incredible resilience of the human body, the human spirit. You're certainly an example of that. I mean, how do you kind of, when you were talking about like, I'm trying to regenerate these nerve endings and, that's on the like micro level of like repairing the body, but it goes all the way to, the highest level of repairing your spirit, your perspective of the world, your role, what is your legacy, what is your gift and what are you leaving behind? And there's nothing more powerful than a story well told, an incredible story well told. You're certainly that. I mean, how do you, kind of look at this path and translate that into something that somebody can extract something to help them, right? That's not very well said, but you know what I'm saying? How do you take your story and say, all right, how can I convey my experience in a way that somebody can take something from that and implement it into their life for the better?
I think it could be simply answered with 2 words, or replacing words, and it's basically starting your day with "I will," whatever that means for you, whatever's that task for the day, the week, the month, whatever your goals are. The body intrinsically wants to be healthy, so you don't have a bad back. Now, look, there are people with back problems and things with real issues, but a lot of people have a bad back because they're sedentary. They just sit around, and they're not active. The body wants to move. The body wants to get up. So that bad back could be telling 85% of the people in this world, get up, lose 10 pounds, strengthen your core, and the back will stop hurting. I had a bad back. I went to chiropractors. I started running. I got in shape. The back pain went away. The body wants to be healthy. So what I talk to people about is, look, I'm not telling you to go out and do an Ironman. I'm not telling you to go out and do a marathon. Find what it is for you that's going to make you happy and do it. I use the analogy of the stove, which has come a long way. But when I was growing up, or when I worked in Harlem, it was always just an old school stove with a pilot light in the middle, and that light went out, you had a gas leak. I said, the human spirit is what will drive you to heal your body. And that human spirit is the pilot light. Someone's got to turn the knob on. And for me, it was my mom who said, let's get those burners going. And once I did that, am I perfectly healed now? No, I walk with a limp. My stabilizer, I can't stand on my right leg. I can't move my right arm higher than 95%. But I'm healed mentally because of my human spirit. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no metal in my spirit. It's just there, and it flows because, I love my family, extended and my own. And I try now to stay as healthy as I can, so that when I'm older, I know what's ahead of me. I know the arthritis is coming, and what I know what's going to be ahead of me when I'm older. But I'm going to be as healthy and as strong mentally so that I can handle that. And that's what I try to tell people. I'm like, you have it. Me and you are exactly the same. We have the same pilot light.
Right.
Just got to turn it on.
Right. So, but if somebody's out there who's listening and they feel stuck, they're struggling, they're out of shape, or they just don't know what the first thing to do is. Like, they don't know, how to turn that pilot light on, or they don't know who that person is in their life that they can turn to or rely on. Like, how do you, what is the message?
The message would be to do an inventory check on your life. And it may be one of the hardest decisions you have to make when you do that inventory check, because you'll find out who it is or what it is that's keeping you back. And, it could be the person that's closest to you. You have to say, you know what? I just can't deal anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't be around the negativity that's going to keep me in this hole. And I said that. Like, I lost friendships post-accident. There were guys that just were happy enough that I lived and said, deal with it. This is it. You're okay. We'll go out with you in a wheelchair. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want. And that attitude, that energy, and I'm not, this big, atmospheric, it's in the stars type of guy, but that energy is not helping me. I don't need the person to tell me, just be happy with being alive. I said, well, what's good is being alive if I'm not living? And to me, living was running, living was being active, living was staying in shape. So, here I would tell this person, you have to do an inventory check. Find out, go back to being a kid. What was going on in your life when you were happy? And I tell people all the time, I realized it. I did those inventory checks more than once because, we didn't talk about 9/11. But after 9/11, I battled a little depression, and I started to do an inventory check. What was I doing in the times of my life when I was happiest? And it came down to one thing. I was dreaming. Simple. As a kid, you dream. As an adult, we set goals. It's the same freaking thing. So for me, that is what I found. And I started to dream again about running, about cycling, about having a family, and I have it.
Amen, brother. I love that.
Thank you.
You know, you said earlier that goals are really important to you to help keep you structured and focused, and whether it's dreaming or goal setting. So, you know, what's the goal now? What do you dream about now, or what's next?
Well, you know, athletically is how it goes for me. You know, so I'm 49, or I'll be 49 this year. And
Me
this is
too,
something
man.
this is something you probably don't know. So after my bus accident, like, what else can happen to me, right? You know, it's like, wow, the guy hit by a bus and he lives. It's like, you know, how much his bad luck cards are over, you know? So I show up at a bike race in Central Park, and I line up with the Cat 5s, and some guy looks at me and says, hey, aren't you the guy hit by the bus? I'm like, yeah. He goes, what are you doing here? So I said, well, I'm going to try to race with you guys. He's like, really? So, boom, gun goes off, and we start our first, like, 70 guys, and we start our first lap around Central Park, and the first climb, my right glute is evident. I'm done. I'm dropped. Can't get back in the field. I roll around my 5 or 6 laps, and at the end of the race, I see that guy again. He goes, how'd it go? I said, I was dropped in the first lap. He goes, you know, you should be trying out with the para athletes. And I never looked at myself like that. So I said, what? You know, I took it into it, and I went home, and I started Googling it and researching it. And I'm like, you know, I emailed the guy from the para cycling committee, and he's like, yeah, without a doubt. I sent him my information. So I go, now my goal, this was in 2010, right after I finished the Ironman, is to become a paracyclist and go to the Olympics. So I go down to Augusta, Georgia for the Paranational cycling champion, road champions. Again, I did it without asking questions, so I didn't know what was really going on. I went down there, had my road bike. I signed up for the long course road race as a C3 classified paracyclist. All the C1 through C5 raced together. So we're in a pack of 50, 60 people, men and women. Oh, no, the women actually started behind us because I got passed by quite a few of them. So amputees, you know, they're all there in the pack, and you go and you finish. So I really never had an idea of what was going to happen at the end of this 28-mile race. But I finished across the line, and I get called up for a gold medal. So I'm a paranational champion. And I'm like looking around, and they're not calling anyone else. So I go up to the podium, and I'm like, who'd I beat? And the guy's like, oh, you're the only one in the race.
You're like, you're in your category? Like, what is...
So I was like, so it goes in line with the men's fitness thing. I was like, well, I'll take it, but don't make me stand on the podium.
Go where the herd is thin, right? You know what I mean?
So it turns out that in the American paranational racing is so far behind European that they really only concentrate on time trial and track here, because Europe's so far ahead of us. So when they go to the Olympics, they want to send... So all the C3 guys were in the hotel sleeping for the time trial the next day, and I didn't compete in that.
I gotcha.
So anyway, so
where are you taking this?
So I'm talking to the coach. I'm like, well, you know, can I do this? Can I try this? He's like, absolutely. You need to get officially certified in your injury. I said, no problem. And he gave me, like, you know, some coaching tips. And I said, well, I'm going to start to train for 2012 London Olympics. He's like, awesome. So I go to my 2011 year start in Florida to do a 10-day, you know, summer trip. First day, I get hit by a Buick.
No way.
Broke my arm, slid across the road.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, my God.
So that I remember completely. That hurt. As I didn't lose consciousness.
I thought you were pre-disaster. You know, like, that's not supposed to happen again.
No, I was like,
oh, my God.
Me and my buddy were cruising down. And again, my friend Noel Flynn, who ran with me, he came down on the cycling trip. He was into cycling and triathlon. So I'm right on his wheel, and I'm like, this is great. We're feeling awesome. I'm like, yeah, this is good. What's it say? I'm like, 25 miles an hour. Let's go. We had a mile to go. The 49th mile, we had a mile to go home. And a car turns right in front of us. I hear him yell, fuck. And I'm like, ah. He goes up and over. I slid under, landed into the side of the car.
You slid under the car?
No, like hit the side of it. Like slid the floor into the... Broke my arm, you know, road rash. If we have time, the funny story about it is it happened in front of a bar in Clearwater Beach called Krabby Bill's. The bar empties out because we got there for the first day, so it was like 4 o'clock. It was a late day riding. the bar empties out, and there's a whole bunch of guys. So the fire trucks, they're putting me in the Stokes basket. They're stabilizing my neck and my friend. And so I tell the fireman, I go, listen, guys, I'm a New York City firefighter, and thank God I had my fire department kit on. So they're like, oh, okay. I said, just don't take me to a bad hospital. I don't want any special. Just get me to a good hospital. I'm a New York City fireman. Please just take me where you would go. And they're like, all right, don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. And now I'm wrapped up, so I can only see straight. And I hear the paramedic go to someone on the side of the road and say, "Yeah, you're a fireman?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm a fireman." He's like, "So is the guy on the street?" "Oh, yeah? What's his name?" I say, "What's your name?" So I say my name. All you hear is the guy go, "Again?" And I'm going, trying to look like, who is that? So I'm in the emergency room in Florida, and the nurse comes in and says, "Mr. Long?" And I go, yeah, that's me. They go, "You got a visitor?" I go, "The only guy that knows I'm here is in the bed next to me." And three drunk firemen came in to visit me.
Oh, wow.
So
the fraternity, though, man. Wherever you go, right?
Yep.
Wherever you go. That's amazing.
That ended my quest.
So that ended your quest. Yeah. So where does that leave you now, though? Are you like back on the bike?
Yeah,
or?
I'm back at it. I'm back. I'm back racing my bike. A little more focused because I'm still racing as a Cat 5 and still having problems staying with them. So, but this year I really focused. Started a program with a cycling team in Brooklyn, and I'm making every. It's not when you're in your 40s and you're training for something. It's not like you have tomorrow. Like just get it done tomorrow. It's like wait a minute. Every second's got to count here. I got a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So everything's got to count. So I think for the first time in my life as an athlete, I'm training with a purpose. Every workout has a reason. Every workout has a certain time that has to get done, and everything's going pretty smooth so far. So yeah, I want to race. My wife knows I want to race. She knows it keeps me going.
That's great, man.
So.
And do you go? So you ride out in Brooklyn, or do you ride it in Central Park? Like, where do you do your rides around here?
Yeah, it's tough to ride around in New York City.
Yeah.
I ride out in Rockaway Beach is where I live, and I'll ride into Brooklyn to the Prospect Park area. We'll also come over the bridges. I call it like a 4-bridge ride. I'll come over from Rockaway to Brooklyn, then from Brooklyn to Manhattan, then Manhattan to New Jersey, hit State Line in New Jersey, then come back and repeat for about 100 miles.
Yeah, nice.
So, but getting into Central Park has gone through some changes. There's some unfortunate accidents.
Yeah.
And, there's just a lot of people, and you really I'm getting a lot of it done indoors now.
Right.
Because I know plenty of pros that
you can't get
do
hit
their
a
stuff
third time. You can't get hit a third time, man.
I'm running out of lives.
Yeah. Or you got to move out to California, ride some of the mountains around where we live.
Yeah. I would love that. I would love to take a journey one day and see what it's like. My wife was actually born in San Diego.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you could just training camps.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I do get away to with a group from that actually built my bikes for me because my bikes are custom made. And I've been to Mallorca 3 times in Spain.
Oh, wow,
so
nice.
Riding in Europe is so different than riding here. It's just the people, the cars beep the horn to wish you good luck, not to say get out of your way.
Yeah, it's the culture.
Yeah.
It's the culture. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. I think that's a good place to wrap it up and close it down.
Great. I'm super stoked that you had me, and it's really awesome to meet you.
Oh, man, are you kidding? I'm so glad that you came and did this. I'm sure you get fatigued of hearing this, but you are an inspiration. Your story is extraordinary, and it really is a beacon of light for so many people. And I hope that you keep doing what you're doing, man, and spreading your message. Are you going to write another book?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. We talk about it. To be honest with you, we're focusing on making the book a movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool, man.
So,
is there some activity behind that? It's been option and stuff?
There's a little activity. Yeah, we have a guy in California that's turning it into a screenplay, and he's shopping it around a little bit. It's very early, and it could never, ever get done. But he's pretty passionate about getting it done, and I just said as long as it could be done right and tastefully, and if you really think that it will further the message, and he believes it will, so it's my story. Who wouldn't want to have a movie about themselves?
Of course, man. That's cool.
I still, what's funny is I get a lot of crap for my personality. I just have one of those personalities. I can come across to someone the first time I meet him as cocky son of a bitch they ever met. Or I just like to say to people that I've always had a certain level of confidence. And there's nothing wrong with it. So, yeah, I guess it'd be awesome.
You're a New Yorker, man.
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker.
Embrace it, right?
More than that, I'm from Brooklyn.
And what about the what's going on with the I Will Foundation? You didn't even talk about that, right?
my foundation. So, the foundation was birthed out of me saying the words "I will," and I can go real quick with it. Is that I called the gentleman who I read an article about that was hurt. He's from Massachusetts, Fabio Slavic. To this day, I can't believe it. I still haven't met this guy, but I got him through the power of the internet. We had phone calls, and I basically told him, please, I said, everything mirrored what happened to me, happened to you. Help me and I'll help others. And he's helped me tremendously, and without knowing, I'm a perfect stranger. And so I said, I don't want Fabio to be so hard to find for the next Matt Long. So I originally was going to be a webpage, I Will Foundation, Matt Long story. Take from what you can and go. And then people started sending me money. I love it. And so now I started helping people. So it's small because it's me. It's out of my house. Any money I get, I try to give right to someone who needs help. And we've helped vets come home. We've remodeled kitchens and bathrooms for vets that are now paralyzed. I've taken a guy with no arms, built a bike for him, and he rode the bike from Florida to Spokane, Washington.
Whoa.
He's now doing a big thing in Paris. I know I'm not going to know the name, but he's riding like 1,200 miles in Paris.
Wow.
And we helped a girl who was born with polio be the first woman to complete Ironman Kona in a wheelchair.
Wow.
So it's just about getting in there and helping them right away. I don't want it to become where I have a building and where 30% go to expenses. It's like people write me letters, and unfortunately sometimes I have to say no. Or people write me letters and say, this is what I want to... In fact, I'll give the real quick story of it. One day I'm walking in... Now I'm moving out of Manhattan. My life is changing. I'm married, and I'm looking for my bike shop now. I have bike shops in Manhattan. So I go into this bike shop in Sheepshead Bay, Roy's bike shop. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm looking for this and this and that. And I'm like, right. And this gentleman comes in, and he's talking about his bike and how it got stolen. And he kind of walks away, and I, just being, I guess, that nosy New Yorker, I said to the guy behind the counter, I said, what's the deal with this guy? He's like, he lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. So I looked down and noticed that he was an amputee. And then he's kind of like in and out, living in like a shelter or something. And, his bike was his only way to get around and make some dollars. We gave him a bike. And, the staff here, we really can't do it again. He left it outside. It got stolen. So I said, today's his lucky day. I said, here's $2,500. Set him up. And we bought him a bike. Just helped this individual.
That's a nice bike.
Yeah. That was the budget. He did get a nice bike. He upgraded for sure.
Yeah.
But he got a $2,500 bike, and they put a special pedal on it for his leg, and that's something you can't do with a bigger organization. So that's the way I want to keep the I Will Foundation. So it's there, iwillfoundation.com. My story's there. There's other people's stories there. It's not just about me. And we try to help people that have that spirit to live.
Yeah, very cool. And are you speaking anytime soon where the public can check you out? Like, what's the speaking schedule look like, or is that on your website?
My own website, mattlongspeaker.com. We'll have events up, but right now the only two on the schedule are private events.
Right.
Marathon, half marathon season comes around. Usually I'm involved with the road runners. Hopefully I'm back with them. So maybe at those events we'll be around.
Right on. All right. So people who want to check out more about your story, obviously the book, The Long Run, you can find that on Amazon. Click through the Amazon banner ad at richroll.com. Your website, and you're on Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Matt at Matt's Long Run.
Matt's Long Run. Matt's Long Run. It's mattslongrun.com too, right? You have that site, or
that has changed to Matt Long Speaker.
Matt Long Speaker.
Yeah, I made it more of a personal site.
Yeah, cool, man. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking to me.
Thanks for having me,
I
Rich.
appreciate it, man.
Good to be back in the neighborhood here.
Cool. Yeah, you going to go over to 3rd and Long now?
I'm going to take a peek at the old 3rd and Long.
The old bar, right?
See what's going on.
Right around the corner. Cool, man. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Peace.
plants.